Good evening, everybody, and again, a very, very special good evening to the brand new Mr. and Mrs. Bray. But, on behalf of both our respective families, I'd like to welcome you all here. Whether you're family or friends of Francesca or Max, we are absolutely delighted that you are here to share with us what is a very, very special day. And it's wonderful to have such a sparkling turnout from so far and wide, and many of you have travelled across continents and various things to places to be here. But I have to confess to a feeling of relief that so many people are here today, after some of you were made to pay for the postal delivery of your invitations. And when I suggested to Francesca that we needed to keep an eye on costs, I didn't know that she'd take me quite that seriously. And she certainly hasn't since. But I want to comment firstly on the service earlier this afternoon, and what a beautiful and charismatic experience with the wonderful gospel choir. And the readings. And the readings read so beautifully by Gabriella and Louise. But from my personal perspective, it was such a joy seeing Francesca so radiant and happy, and I could not have been prouder walking down the aisle with her this afternoon. It's a memory that I will always cherish, and to see her tying the knot with Max was just so very, very special. And it was also great to see Francesca surrounded by her sister and her wonderful bridesmaids. Now, they've all been with her through thick and thin over the years. Kayla during her time at university, and Becca, Jenny and Nicole, aka Da Club, since early school days. And they all look so pure and angelic and innocent, which rather led me to reflect on how amazing it is that when ladies don bridesmaids' dresses, they can have the effect of completely distorting the truth. And trust me, I've known these girls for so many years. And I hope you enjoyed the champagne reception, and I trust your glasses were kept well charged by Lindsay and her excellent team. And I'd like to extend a very big thank you to Louise, Max's mother, for providing all the champers and for... So getting the celebration off to such a wonderful start. So Louise, you can shoulder some of the blame for the sore heads tomorrow. And finally on the thank yous, I'd like to thank Lord Henry Digby for the use of his estate and the wonderful Minterne house for this celebration. Right from our first visit, he and his fantastic events coordinator, I don't know where she is, she's probably standing at the back there, Emily, has been absolutely fantastic, and they've made us feel so welcome. Some of you may not know, but somebody's had to return home early tonight, and Lord Digby volunteered to drive them back to their hotel. So that's the sort of, that's what we've received from them, real generosity in everything that they have done. So such a momentous day as this inevitably leads one to reflect on your daughter's life and achievements. So if you'll allow me, I'll give you a potted history of Francesca's life as I have perceived it. Yes, you're the centre of attention, don't worry. So she was hatched in Gloucester Royal Hospital, where I was working all those moons ago, I won't say how many years ago. And we chose the name Francesca because I wanted my first daughter to be called Frankie, a character name. Well, of course, she's been called every name under the sun other than Frankie. But as many of you will know, within our family, she's called Minnie, often abbreviated to Min, after Joe called her a moaning Minnie when she was teething at about 4 months. But that name has stuck, and that is the name that I'll be referring to her from now on in. And everybody in our family, it seems, is referred to by a different name than their given name. And rather unfortunately for me, I am frequently referred to by the abbreviated form of Richard. or Richard Head, far too often by my children. But Minnie had a successful and happy school career. She was always quite mischievous. Some of you will not be surprised to hear that. Certainly no goody-goody, but always displayed a knack of getting away with it, and could be argued that she's retained that to this present day. She ended up doing quite well academically, despite my attempts at trying to tutor her in maths and science on Sunday evenings, which I found to be an impossible task. Always ended up in tears and a monumental bust-up, for which I was always blamed by her sister and her mother, despite them not being in the same room. But Minnie was very much an all-rounder at school. She represented and captained the school in a number of different sports. She was quite a good athlete who absolutely loathed running, despite breaking a number of school athletic records. Represented the school in a number of outward bound activities, including all 3 distances in the Dartmoor 10 Tours Challenge, and competed in the 126-mile Devizes to Westminster canoe race with Jenny, one of her bridesmaids today, in absolutely foul conditions. And her school career culminated in her being appointed head girl. To her great surprise, and to Jo and my complete amazement. And it's perhaps in keeping with her character that when she was summoned to meet the headmaster in his office to be offered the position, she was absolutely petrified that she was going to be punished for some recent misdemeanour, and there'd been quite a few of those. She then went to Bournemouth University to do event management, ready to rumble, and rumble she did, with a set of young ladies who are all here today and who had quite a considerable influence on my innocent little cherub when she arrived at uni. And these ladies became known as the Bournemouth Birds. I'm not quite sure what she did at university. Certainly didn't play any sport whatsoever, and clearly not involved in academia all the time, and quite possibly none of the time. But she took her declared aim to get to know every nightclub and bar in Bournemouth very seriously indeed. And she managed to lose 4 mobile phones in a year, 2 in 1 week, declaring herself just a victim of bad luck. But her initial chosen profession of event management, which became refined to working as a PA, basically involves organising people and telling them what to do. Something her sister's very good at. And both girls could not have had a better role model, in my opinion, than their mother. The bossy genes clearly been handed down with no deletions. She then worked in an event management company in London and then travelled around Australia and Asia for 18 months to then return to work at a private equity firm in Mayfair. And after having not done any exercise whatsoever for 8 years, out of the blue, she declared that she was going to run the London Marathon, which she did, against all my predictions and to my great astonishment. Now, as an aside, Max has also run the London Marathon, and Max, as you know, we're not a competitive family in any shape or form. And the fact that Minnie ran a faster time by 1 minute, 3.6847 seconds. It's neither here nor there and hardly needs mention. London Marathon was followed by a bit of an after-party, attended by her family, the club and the Bournemouth Birds and all their partners. A very, very thirsty support group. They'd all provided Minnie with fantastic support. They then went on to provide me with a fantastic bar bill. And what was meant to be light refreshments from 4 till 6 in the afternoon didn't finish until closing time in a London pub. And I understand a number of Monday morning sickies thrown in after that one. But what really worries me is that they're all here tonight. So the London Marathon was followed by her completing the Paris Marathon in a respectable time, 12 days after having contracted COVID. Again, she enjoyed the wonderful support of the club and her family, and again, they all seemed to be excessively thirsty in the evenings. And she's threatening to complete her trilogy in New York, which she thinks would be a fitting venue. No doubt complete with her thirsty support crew, and sounds like an expensive one to me. So what are Minnie's defining qualities? Well, when considering these, it's striking how much she has inherited from both her grandmothers, who she loved so much, and who sadly are no longer with us here in body. She's very easygoing, which can conceal an inner toughness. She can be very trusting, almost to a fault, and I would have paid very good money indeed on the occasion she asked Ben, her brother, to check the tyre pressures of her car before driving up to university with all her belongings. And this he duly did, but not before convincing her that she needs to vacate the car with all her belongings and stand outside in the rain, otherwise the tyres might explode. But she's quite chilled, enjoys her cocktails, and no doubt will do later this evening. And she's had the odd hangover or two, and the one that I will always remember was on a family trip to Rome a few years ago. She and Ben had been up drinking Moscow mules until a very late hour before staggering off to bed, and in the early hours of that morning there was a significant earthquake just north of Rome that affected the city. And it was an amazing experience, actually, to witness it. Our hotel walls were swaying all over the place. Car and fire alarms were going off. There was complete pandemonium in the hotel. Minnie woke up and just attributed all the commotion to just a regulation hangover, kicking in a little bit early, and rolled over and went back to bed. Completely oblivious in the morning to what had been going on and what had registered as a significant earthquake at 6.8 on the Richter scale, barely registered at all on Minnie's hangover scale. But she very rarely complains, and she's fiercely loyal, incredibly caring of her brother and sister and all her family and close friends. Understated in her achievements and totally overstated and over the top in her social life. And as you can see, she likes a bit of sparkle and glitter. She's also quite mischievous, and there's one thing, I need to get this off my chest, Min, that I will never, ever forgive you for. We attended a Tyrolean evening a few years ago whilst on a walking holiday in Austria. Now, some of you will know these evenings involve a bunch of locals dressed in rather tight lederhosens, dancing and yodeling on the stage and slapping each other in some interesting places and brandishing a variety of rather menacing chopping instruments. Well, Minnie took it upon herself before things got going to have a chat with one of the performers and said if they needed a volunteer from the audience, she had just the person in mind who'd fit the bill perfectly. So you all know what's coming here. And I remember to this day sitting there when the call went up, we're going to get somebody from the audience, thinking, well, this is not going to be me. And I started feeling sorry for the poor person who was the victim, who was going to be hauled up to make an absolute idiot of themselves in front of over 200 people. The next thing I knew, that person was me. And I was made to do all sorts of things, yodeling, dancing, and I need to be careful how I say this, brandishing my chopping instrument in front of everybody. But it was not a good look, I can tell you, and it was one of the worst moments I've had to experience. The one thing I was able to hold my own in, though, was downing a half litre of the local brew and then a schnapps in one, and that went really well, actually, and I think I held my own on that one. But Minnie is adored and looked up to by her brother and sister, and Gabriella once stated, accurately in my opinion, I may be a bit of a princess, but Minnie is the queen. And then, out of the blue, Max came on the scene. Min and Max, Minnie and Maxie, Fran and Max, or F&M, had a certain ring to it. And as far as I was concerned, the timing was absolutely perfect. Max made his first full appearance at a family do in Woodstock, where we rented an Airbnb for a weekend away. And what a successful first appearance it was. So just to provide you with a little bit of context, whenever the Murphy family get together for Christmas and various other times, we always play Trivial Pursuits in the evening. And it's always girls v boys. And to say that these games are competitive is a gross understatement, because the girls just take it far too seriously. But rather unfortunately, results had not been going the way of the boys, perhaps not always helped by certain members nodding off at key moments. No doubt after a busy week at work, and Ellie had also joined the girls' team, so we were really struggling. So Ben, Will and I were on the lookout for a suitable reinforcement. And in particular, we were looking for some help with those pesky pink and brown pie questions, which we always struggled with. So we had the others fairly well covered. So after a fairly full, sociable evening, off we went with the Trivial Pursuits. And within 10 minutes, courtesy of Max, we had secured the pink and brown pies and went on to win, and we've never looked back since. And the victory, of course, was celebrated modestly, without any hint of triumphalism whatsoever, or suggestions of where the girls could shove their pink and brown pies, I can assure you. But the very welcome request for the hand of Francesca duly followed, and the rest is history. And Max didn't disappoint with the engagement ring either, another whopper for one of the Murphy girls. On a more serious note, very sadly, Joe and I were never able to meet Michael, Max's father, who passed away earlier this year. And that remains a significant regret. He sounds like a wonderful, fascinating man, and I know how much you'll be missing him today, Max. I also know how much Minnie enjoyed meeting him, and it sounds as though they struck up a very good relationship in a short period of time. Joe and I were privileged to have been able to attend his funeral, and we were struck by what he had achieved in his life, so eloquently and beautifully described in 3 splendid eulogies. And his clear love for his family shone through, and I'm sure he is here in spirit with you today, Max. So it's customary for the father of the bride to welcome their new son-in-law to the family, and this gives Joe and me the greatest pleasure, as we could not be happier to include you in our family, Max. So what are Max's qualities that I've come to appreciate? Well,
we'll come to that later.
Well, he's also understated and humble, clearly very tolerant with a well-developed sense of humour, choosing to marry Minnie. But Max takes punctuality very seriously. For Max, being early is on time. Being on time is late, and being late is totally unacceptable. But rather unfortunately, he's extended this concept of timekeeping to drinking pints of beer early in the morning at airports. And equally unfortunately, he has 2 very willing accomplices in my son Ben and son-in-law Will. So I'd suggest that the next time you see 3 yobs getting stuck into the beers at 6:30 in the morning at an airport, there's a high chance it's my son and 2 son-in-laws. Very, very disappointing. And they were also very punctual with their first pints at Lord's before the start of play this summer, I seem to recall. But Max has got an impressive palate for red wine. At a blind tasting we had at home one weekend, he correctly identified all 6 reds. Now, in my view, that demonstrates a proper upbringing and education. Max is a great cook and loves pottering in the kitchen. Now, as many of you will know, Max and Minnie have a wonderful Cavalier King Charles Spaniel called Louis, who sadly can't be here tonight. And he must surely be the most sport dog in Battersea, which is saying something. But Max is the first person I've ever met who faithfully cooks cordon bleu food for their little pooch every week. And I asked Max recently what he had cooked for Louis the previous week, and he made the mistake of telling me. Pork, beef and salmon fillets fried in coconut oil. And apparently the coconut oil is for a silky fur. Bone broth with quinoa, carrots, sweet potatoes and butternut squash. Eggs with the shells removed, roasted and then sprinkled on top. Unbelievable, Max, but he does have lovely fur. Max is a passionate supporter of Lewes Football Club and a frustrated supporter of Chelsea, so clearly a supporter of hopeless causes. But Max, welcome to our family. I speak on behalf of all of us. We're absolutely delighted to now call you family. As we experienced last year when Gabriella married Will, one of the great joys of marrying off one's daughter is meeting the future husband's family. And earlier this year, we had the great pleasure of Louise, Chris, and Max's grandmother, who's Gaga. That is her name. That is her name. If ever a name was the complete antithesis of the person it's attached to, it's Gaga. She is as sharp as a nail. And Minnie had rather warned us about them, and I like to think we were sort of prepared, but what an evening that was. And boy, it didn't finish until the early hours of the morning with some enthusiastic dancing in the kitchen, but we look forward to many more exciting evenings with you both. Incidentally, I thought it was interesting how Gaga, no doubt in a show of solidarity with Minnie, left her mobile phone behind when she departed the following morning. But before I wind up, there is, of course, one person whom I haven't mentioned other than in jest, and who I want to acknowledge and who is central to everything in our family, and that is my wife, Jo. As well as being a great wife to me, she has been such a wonderful mother to our 3 children. And we would not be here today for this celebration if it was not for her. She is adored by all of us. And I want to say on behalf of all of us, Hammy, that's her name, a big thank you for everything you have done for today and that you continue to do for all of us. So finally, you'll be relieved to hear, as is customary, I'd like to offer a few suggestions to the happy couple as they embark on their life together. And I make no apology to those of you who've heard some of these before at last year's wedding. Firstly, always say thank you to your partner, however small the act of kindness extended to you, and take every opportunity to tell them that you love them. And always remember that saying sorry is a strength, not a weakness. Always look to have fun. One day you will look back and realise that whilst you thought you were just having fun, you were creating memories that you will cherish forever. And to quote Tony, Francesca's grandfather, always try and live your life in technicolor rather than black and white. And boy, he has provided such a wonderful example of how to do this with real style. Max, don't ever bother buying Minnie an expensive phone. And always take the mickey out of each other. But again, Max, you're going to have to be pretty selective here because the amount of material you're going to have to choose from is substantial. But ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask you to be upstanding, to raise your glasses to Fran and Max. We wish them a future of love, laughter and endless happiness. Here's raising a toast to the two of you and to the exciting journey that lies ahead. Thank you.
So now we're on to the groom's speech. Something you may not know about Max is he actually attended acting school. This is one of the many phases of his life, including the championship manager phase. But we won't talk about that. So Max, could you please come up here and regale us? And let's see what you learnt in acting school.
Not the dancing, clearly. That was good.
Well, firstly, I would like to thank all of you for being here today to celebrate this special day with us. We are both truly grateful to have every one of you here today, especially those that have flown all the way in from Ireland, Colorado, Virginia, and Singapore. It's amazing to see all of our friends and family in the same room. It's possibly the only time in life that this happens, so I hope everyone is ready to bring the party later. I also want to extend a huge thanks to Tony for his incredibly generous contribution towards today, as well as Mum for providing all of the champagne. And also thanks to my very talented sister-in-law, Tash, for doing all of the beautiful stationery she's done as well. And finally, thank you to the 3 gorgeous little flower girls that have done an amazing job earlier today. Thank you so much. On the subject of thank yous, Pete and Joe. Simply put, today would not have been possible without you, and no thanks will ever be enough for giving Fran and I our dream wedding today. From a personal perspective, Pete and Joe are hands down the best parents-in-law that any man could ever ask for. And since the day I met them, they have done everything to make me feel part of the family. I actually remember that day very clearly. Meeting the other half's parents can be a nerve-wracking occasion, and one that can set the tone for the rest of the relationship moving forward. So when Fran informed me that I'd been invited along to Twickenham to watch England play rugby, there were many thoughts that went through my head. The main one was, oh dear, I haven't watched a rugby game in almost a decade. I'm going to have nothing insightful to offer, and I'm going to be exposed for the football hooligan that I actually am. Thankfully, everything went as well as it could, except, that is, for one moment that still haunts me to this day. Trying to reciprocate the generosity I'd been shown, I offered to fetch the next round of drinks. Forgetting I was at a highbrow rugby game rather than my usual Neanderthalic sport, I asked the bartender for the beer that Pete had requested. Now, this, to those of you who don't normally attend rugby matches, does not mean a refreshing pint of cold lager. Not knowing Pete's preferred beverages at that time, I returned to our seat and passed the drinks down the line, only to turn at the exact moment to see the look of utter disgust on Pete's face as he was handed a flat, room-temperature pint of ale. He brushed it off with all the class you'd expect from a man like Pete, but it could possibly be the reason he's never let me buy a round ever since. Luckily, I had his back on our recent holiday to the south of France, though, when we were paired up in the family cooking challenge. I spent the afternoon cooking a 3-course meal for the whole family, while Pete cooked himself in the pool, lying in the sun with a gin and tonic. We both loved every minute of it, though, I think. There are many reasons I love and admire Joe and Pete so much, but I think the main reason is reflected in Fran, Gabriella, and Ben. The incredibly strong family values you've set, the love and support you've given them, and the work ethic you've instilled in them is something I think is ultimately every parent's most important role in life. And bringing up 3 wonderful, kind, successful children that you have is a testament to you both as parents. And it's something I promise that Fran and I will do everything we can to continue. So if we could please all raise a glass to the best in-laws a man could hope for, to Joe and Pete. As I've just mentioned, family is something that I hold incredibly close to my heart. I've been indescribably lucky to grow up with 2 of the most caring, strongest and supportive women on earth looking after me. Mum, thank you for being there for me from day one until today. Thank you for being at every sports match, every school-related event, and ferrying me around to friends all over the southeast until I eventually managed to pass my driving test on the 4th attempt. Thank you for teaching me compassion and empathy, and for showing me how important your family, friends, and especially your children are to you as you go through life. I know I haven't always been the easiest, but luckily that's someone else's problem now. And Gaga, you are, simply put, one of the greatest people to ever exist. Your unwavering positivity and humour, especially given what you've had to go through in life, is an inspiration to us all. You've been rock of the family for centuries now, and we're just so happy to have you here today. She probably has her hearing aids turned off and can't hear a word I'm saying, but I love you, Gaga. And my brother Tom, thank you for always trying to keep me on the straight and narrow. Although by date of birth, I may be 3 years older than you, but you've always been the mature and sensible one. And I'll always be grateful to you for being there to look out for me. You've all welcomed Fran into the family with open arms, and it means the world to me that she's felt part of the furniture from the first day. So if we could please all raise your glass and have a toast to family. Sadly, there is one family member I'm not able to thank here in person today. Many of you will know that Tom and I lost our father earlier this year. Losing a parent and getting married in the same year is a very strange sensation. Going from the pits of grief to the happiest day of your life in the space of a few months is a roller coaster, to say the least. There are many things I wish I'd done and said to him while he was alive. That he was a great man. He was funny, he was caring, generous, and I know all of those in the room that did know him will have an infinite number of stories to tell that would make us all smile today. I'm so thankful for all the love and support that people have offered in the last 6 or 7 months, and it's honestly meant the world to Tom and I. I also know how much he wanted to be here today. He was adamant that he was going to make it, even when his condition started to deteriorate. And even when it became clear he wasn't going to leave the hospital, it didn't stop him from promising to be here come hell or high water. And although he may not be here in person today, I know he's watching down on us with a smile on his face. One thing I'll also be forever grateful for is that Dad got to know and love Fran, and he went out knowing that both of his sons had settled down and met their people. And although he'll never get to see his grandchildren, he'll continue to be part of this family for as long as his memory lives on. So if you could please raise a glass to my father and all the family and friends that are watching on from above today. Cheers. There's one final thank you I'd like to say, or two, which are to the bridesmaids and groomsmen. Girls, firstly, you all look amazing. Thank you so much for always being there for Fran. I've been unsurprised to hear some of the wilder escapades and misadventures Fran had got herself into over the years. Luckily, she's had the best group of girls there to look out for her, especially when she starts forgetting her handbags the minute she's had her fourth wine. You've all welcomed me straight into the group, which I've always been immensely grateful for. I love spending time with you all and your other halves, and I very much look forward to many exciting adventures over the years to come. And to my groomsmen, you guys really are my nearest and dearest, and all of you I have always and will always consider my brothers. I've known the 5 of you for a combined 113 years. And over those years, you'll have seen the good, the bad, and everything in between. I'm sure Paigey will cover most of those later. Thank you for being there for me. Thank you for making sure today is run perfectly for Fran and I. And here's to the next collective 113 years together. With all thank yous covered, on to the main event. Would everyone please make some noise for my wife, Francesca Maria Bray. Fran, you look absolutely stunning, my queen. It's funny when two people meet who have both been the single ones in their friend groups for the best part of a decade. From everyone on the outside, I can speak for us both when I say it's been an amazing outpouring of love and support from everyone around us since day one. Definitely elements of relief as well. From the inside, from my side at least, it's been a wonderful education. So I thought today would be a good opportunity to tell you a few of the important things I've learned about Fran over the last couple of years. One of the first things I learned about Fran is that she is extremely determined. She never backs down from a challenge. It's something we both have in common, And as much as I will always view this as a positive trait, it has had a tendency to land us both in trouble, especially when competitive tequila shots are involved. Being so determined also means Fran does not mess about. So when she started flashing her ring finger at me at anything remotely to do with marriage came up, I knew she was serious. Most men would be mildly terrified if someone did that on a third date. But that is one reason I think we're perfect together. Another thing I learned about Fran very early on is that she is absolute comedy, intentionally and unintentionally. It's one of the aspects of Fran I love the most, and I can say with absolute certainty there hasn't been a day since we met that's been without laughter. Fran would, of course, label herself as a master of timing and wit, but it's always been the unintentional ones that have made me laugh the most. I won't embarrass the bride on her wedding day, but one example I could pick from my favourite Franisms would be something like, "I didn't know cheesecake had cheese in it." Just over a year ago, we also welcomed a small furry addition to our family, a little King Charles Cavalier named Louis. This is where I got my first glimpse of Fran's maternal instinct in action. The lesson I learned on his arrival was less about maternal instincts, though, and more about my relegation to the third most important member of the household. Still, coming home from work every day and spending the evening with those two has always and will always be my favourite part of the day. It's not always roses, though. Fran can be frustrating. This will be obvious to anyone that's ever attempted to get her to stay awake through a whole film. Or at least one that didn't involve Mel Gibson or Bruce Willis in a 90-minute adrenaline fest. It's also frustrating knowing that you're marrying someone that is right 100% of the time. For those of you who know me in the room most of my life, you'll be shocked to hear I'm talking about Fran always being right here, not me. The most important thing I've learned about Fran over the last couple of years, though, is that beneath that sometimes hard exterior exists the kindest, most thoughtful, caring and loving person I have ever met. This year especially has been a bit of a roller coaster, and the way you've been there to support me and my family has been nothing short of remarkable. But you are a remarkable person, Fran, and that is something I promise to remind you of, both with words and with actions, every single day for the rest of our lives together. I love you more than words could possibly articulate, and I couldn't be proud to stand here today and call you my wife. So could everyone please stand and raise a glass to the one, the only, the Queen of South Chelsea, Francesca Bray. Cheers, everyone. I'm getting shots.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of the evening when it can go either way. Pray silence for the best man. Paigey, if you can come up here. We don't know how PC his speech is. We have no idea what he's going to say because, of course, he missed the rehearsal yesterday.
Thanks, man.
I'm sexy, I know it.
Lovely. Can you hear me okay? Thank you for that intro music. Right, here we go. So, good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Pete for taking my intro, you dick. Just to introduce myself briefly, for those who don't know me, I'm James Page, or Paigey to most. I actually received a wedding invite a few years ago that was addressed to me as Mr. Paigey Page. So it's just bizarre. People don't think I have a first name. And Fran, can I please tell you, my name does not have an I in it. All through the wedding prep have I seen I, Paigey, P-A-I-G-E-Y. It's not the one. Anyway, look, Max and I have known one another since we were around 4 years old, quite literally from the sandpit days of Homewood House School in Kent. This comfortably makes him... There's a lot of Homewood House people here today, aren't there? Yeah, there we go. This company makes him my oldest friend, and since then we have very much remained a big part of each other's lives, going on 30 plus years. Anyway, look, I'm humbled to have been asked to be the best man at Max and Francesca's wedding here to endorse it today. I'm, of course, greatly supported by the other groomsmen, Tom, JB, Ben Jemmett-Page and Ben Murphy. I would also like to personally thank all those involved in making today happen, particularly, of course, to both families for everything they have done to ensure Max and Fran have such a memorable day. It is a wonderful venue, and there is something very special about having a black tie wedding on the run-up to Christmas, isn't there? I also want to further echo Max's sentiments by thanking the bridal party. Jem, Jen, Nicole and Kayla. Fran is very lucky to have you all today, and you all look fantastic. I hear you had a good few days up in Manchester, which was aptly coined Franchester for the weekend. Officer Murphy. I must also mention the flower girls, Myla, Eden, and mine, Isabella. I think we can all agree how incredibly sweet they look today. We are proud to have Max as Isabella's godfather, and indeed he is also one to Arabella, Ben, your MC today, his firstborn, who unfortunately can't be here today. So Max is godfather to our two Bellas, and his two best mates have the surname Page. I mean, it's lovely, it's crazy. It was the easiest of decisions to make Max a godfather, as I know Ben will agree. That being said, quite frankly, I'm a little bit offended that I haven't been asked to be godfather to Max and Fran's firstborn. Palpable confusion setting in. I'm in fact talking about Prince Louis. Their beloved King Charles Cavalier, who Max and Fran, or certainly Max, sees as their firstborn. He even has his own Instagram page. I fully understand that puppies can be hard work, what with the sleepless nights, the whining, and of course the cleaning up of the relentless amounts of, well, shit. But Max, can I take this moment to say it is no way near comparable to having a baby. So, on to the main event. No, not Max, Fran. It's of course Fran, or Minnie to some, as I found out. Fran, it goes without saying just how incredibly stunning you look today. Everything from your hair and your makeup, and of course the fabulous dress is just beautiful. You look an absolute knockout, and Max is a very lucky man. I recall meeting Fran for the first time after only a few months of them seeing one another. The fact Max was introduced to her so early on, was because he knew he was onto something special. I warmed to her instantly, and she has fit effortlessly into a group of friends who have known each other for years. From what I know, Max has done the same, which is a testament to both of their characters and the kind, easygoing people that they are. Thank goodness that despite nearly not making their first date after a few too many the night before, she persevered and showed up. Maxie. Here we go. I must say, you are looking incredibly sharp tonight. But I can only assume your tux was picked out for you by one of the nearest and dearest ladies in your life. For some context here, Fran has taken over the mantle from Louise, Max's mum, of dressing Max. It just isn't something he has ever been particularly fussed about. Oh, sorry, bear with me. Fussed about... So I've lost... and he's never really liked shopping. So I would always look forward to the annual wardrobe shake-up after his birthday or Christmas, when a black T-shirt was replaced by a black T-shirt, a black jacket by a black jacket, and black jeans by the same black jeans. That's a little bit unfair, there was some grey in there somewhere. So as I touched upon earlier, Max and I spent many happy years together growing up. We would forever be at each other's house at any opportunity. One early memory was Max having to be collected late one evening, having become violently ill after we'd made inroads into a 1 kilogram bar of dairy milk chocolate. Why that amount of chocolate was in the house in the first place, you'd have to ask my parents. A real joy of ours was spending so much time playing sport together when we were younger, be it in school teams or at home. At home, we were always putting his poor, unsuspecting brother Tom in goal, leaving one in on the poor lad who is 3 years younger but is now bigger than us, upwards, not outwards, Tommy. Max and I like to think, however, that we had a little bit part to play in nurturing Tom into the sportsman he eventually became. Max has always loved football. He's been a nearly lifelong Chelsea fan. And more recently, he has been enjoying his weekend trips down to the Dripping Pan to see Lewes Football Club play. As a shareholder, I know since he has met the Murphys, he has been lucky enough to have made several trips to Twickenham as well. Still waiting for that call up on that one, Pete. That'd be lovely to have. In due course, I'll be ready and waiting. Like many boys of our age when we were younger, Max and I loved to play video games. Max must have played more seasons of Football Manager on the PC than anyone on the planet. He does, however, have the tendency to throw his toys out of the pram. There were many pressure cooker moments on the PlayStation that resulted in Max's bedroom becoming a graveyard of broken PlayStation controllers and laptops. Speaking of cookers, I was recently informed that apparently Max went through a phase of beating up other children with saucepans, only to ask for a toy kitchen for Christmas. I assume with the intent of continuing this unusual behaviour. A byproduct of the old outburst was that Max also does not take losing well. On a school weekend of Nationals athletics, Max was not performing as he'd hoped and ended up accidentally wrecking his knee on the high jump bar, ultimately ending up in the A&E department of Stoke Hospital. This action of self-sabotage rather oddly coincided with him being out of the running to win the event and left us with a stand-in for the 4x100 metre relay. I'm convinced we would have won it should Max have been fit to run. I was in that relay, by the way, just in case you wanted. I know you're amazed. Anyway, safe to say both our fathers were overjoyed with the use of their time on a Sunday as we made our way back down the M1, not daring to speak a single word while listening to 90s Britpop on the CD changer. And then I mentioned the marathon, but Pete's covered that. So Max and I went very different ways for secondary school, but our friendship never did. He still never lets me forget how he coolly nutmegged me and scored very early on in the Charterhouse Tunbridge football match. And a quick anecdote from his school days here. Whilst at school, Max was sent home from a Spanish exchange trip where he was staying with a family in Valladolid. He drunk too much and ended up hospitalised having his stomach pumped. So, the programme was subsequently cancelled for future generations. Then followed the fun years of our late teens and early 20s, trips to Cornwall, Max fully embracing his Sloane era, frequenting West London nightclubs on a regular basis until it was deemed no longer cool. Then came the numerous holidays at his dad's villa in Ibiza, being some of the best summers of our lives. There was a brief stint at university in Oxford, Brooks, but all Max really learned was that he should have probably gone to uni with his best mate instead of following a girl there. But if we can take anything from that, when it comes to love, he falls hard, and he is as committed as ever. During the later London years, it never surprised me that we ended up living a stone's throw away from one another in Islington. Max was sharing a flat with his brother Tom, and with it being unfurnished, Max needed furniture. The thing is with Max, when it comes to DIY, he is inherently lazy. So much so that he proceeded to buy an expensive IKEA wardrobe which remained in a box in the hallway, unbuilt. The boys then moved 100 yards up the road to another flat. Max took the wardrobe with Tom's help, still in its packaging, of course, where, yes, it remained unbuilt, until he eventually decided to give it away for free. The time between purchase and sale, well, giveaway, 3 years. Max has found moments, as we all do at times, in properly settling into things. That or he just simply gets bored with the status quo. But this has particularly manifested itself in his career path to date. His exploration of various industries include estate agency, acting, where he passed out in the kitchen one time from having overeat, trying to consume 4,000 calories for a roll, and of course, advertising. I think there was a little side venture of online whiskey selling there at some point as well. And he worked for Tom for one whole day, or maybe it was just until lunchtime. I don't really know. Tom will tell me about that. To be honest, your CV must look like a Yellow Pages catalogue. But look, credit to Max. He is competent, knowledgeable, logical, and gets things done. Max's way, of course. Apart from flat-back furniture. I don't know the longest time Max has been in a role, but I know he started his current one a few months ago, and it sounds like it's going well. Either way, I have no doubt his new boss at home will keep him on the straight and narrow. Excuse me. I hope the boys all enjoyed the stag in Amsterdam. Indeed, Max noted with appreciation how grateful he was that I had been more forgiving on his than he was on my own in Berlin several years ago. Luckily for him, we've all grown up a bit since then. But taking a hangover Max cycling around the city was a highlight. He cycles a bit like a 7-year-old with his knees sort of kicking out sideways. It's incredible to watch. But he completed it with spirit in excessively tight lycra to add to his outfit of the previous day of a bright orange extension Rebellion t-shirt and heavy wooden clogs. I touched upon Ibiza earlier, which is still to this day some of the fondest memories I have with Max, but this was all made possible by Michael, Max and Tom's father. This is, of course, a day of celebration, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Michael. It was an unimaginably challenging time in the family's life as Mikey left us earlier this year. Spending many years with him and the boys growing up, I feel very qualified to say how much he loved them both and how proud he was of them. He was like a surrogate father to me and a lovely man who commanded the greatest respect. He was fiercely intelligent, often magnanimous, utterly charming, and always walked the beat of his own drum. All traits Max possesses. And along with those, Max is also trustworthy, kind, and considerate. I mean, he has his moments of being absolutely downright stubborn and obstinate, but I admire his self-belief and his often relaxed take on life. I can't help but laugh at his moments of excessive over-exuberance when he's excited about something and his tendency to use one too many hyperboles. Max, you are my best friend and always will be. Having someone in your life that is a constant, a comforting feature in your mind of familiarity, one where you can instantly recall a good moment together, one that you have already shared so much with, and one that you will always be there for you, is invaluable. Our friendship means the world to me. Fran, I hope you enjoyed growing old with him as much as I enjoyed growing up with him. With all that being said, tradition suggests I should offer the newlyweds some advice. I wanted to avoid something generic, so my only snippet is, and this is funny because Pete sort of mentioned it earlier, never play a board game with Max is what I would say. And whilst I've got you all here, I encourage you to do the same. It's just hilarious, some of the arguments we've had over board games in the past. Max and Fran, in my final words, I speak for everyone and wishing you all the happiness for the future. Your marriage and your life together has just begun, and I know you have plans to move out to the countryside in due course. We all love you and wish you good luck. So the final toast in celebration of Mr. and Mrs. Bray's marriage. Would you all please be upstanding and raise your glasses to the bride and groom. The bride and groom! Thank you, everyone, and good evening.